Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to you all. This is the 10th Music Ally Zoom panel show. So if you've been here for all 10 episodes, thank you for being with us for a fifth of the year. I'm Joe Sparrow in Berlin, and as you can see, we have a bumper crop of guests with us this week. So perhaps as people are arriving, we'll introduce ourselves. It'll take a couple of minutes for everyone to come through the door. But thank you for joining us here on the Music Ally show. This week, we have a very special sort of workshop panel topic, a Spotify marketing special. How can artists use Spotify's tools to maximize their impact on and off the platform? We're going to dig into the most out of these tools, find out what works, what doesn't work, and look at some success stories for all different levels of artists, and from the platform perspective, and from some people who have used it to generate success themselves. So, as I said, we have a bumper selection of very special guests. So let's start with our two guests from Spotify. We have Charleton Lamb, the Senior Product Marketing Manager, and Jeff Stempeck, Lead Artist and Label Marketing, both of whom help artists, labels, and teams get the most out of Spotify and release some very interesting data in the last 24 hours about their marquee tool. So hi, Charleton and Jeff. Good morning to you in New York. And a little bit closer to where I am, at least, Brainer Baptista, Marketing Executive at the boutique creative and marketing agency Blackstar London. Hello, Brainer.
Hello, everyone.
And a man for whom I have infinite respect, because he's on the west coast of America, and it is thus 7 a.m. and looks fresher than I have ever looked, I believe. That's Moody Jones, Vice President, Digital and Creative at the distribution, record label, and publishing company Empire. Hi, Moody.
Hi, happy to be here, guys. Excited.
I'm very happy to have you. And regular guests, of course, from London, Henriette Heimdal, Marketing Development Coordinator for Europe and the UK at CD Baby, the largest global distributor of independent music. Hi, Hen.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
Hello, pleasure. And I'm sure that Hen, this week, as a sort of someone who exists in between artists and the streaming services, will have some interesting questions for us all. And finally, last but by no means least, and I do mean that, it's Patrick Ross, SVP of Digital Strategy at Music Ally on a boat in London. Hi, Patrick.
Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me back.
Always a pleasure, never a chore. Patrick, so before we get started, this week, normally we have the pleasure of being joined by Stuart Dredge, Music Ally's editor, to talk about the news. But because we have such a big panel and a lot of interest in just getting on with the workshop, we've unceremoniously booted Stu off the show to get on with the panel. Sorry, Stu. So we're going to get right on with it. But before we do that, Patrick, can you just briefly explain what Music Ally is and does for people who are not aware?
Sure. Thanks, Joe. For hopefully most people that have joined us today, we've got a nice big audience. Hopefully most of you all are subscribers. Music Ally is a knowledge company trying to bring knowledge and insights around the global music business, which takes the form of a lot of our publication, which we'll share some links on here in a minute. Hopefully you're all subscribers. If not, we'll put some details about that. Obviously, we've been talking about this topic as well, talking about Marquee and everything that Spotify is doing, so this ties in really nicely. But we also provide training and education across the global music industry, as well as marketing services, and we'll talk about more of those later.
Super, thanks very much. Patrick, that's great. So what we're going to do is we will be starting this session a little bit differently to normal ones. And I think we've probably got about everybody through the door now. Jeff and Charleton and Jeff are going to screen share some news and updates on Spotify's key marketing features. And then when they've done that, they're going to guide us through that. We'll come back to the panel and we'll talk about all the different features. So let's get onto the panel, I guess, which is good. So what do artists and artist teams need to know about getting the most out of Spotify's tools? We're going to talk about that and getting the most out of a few of those specific tools. Spotify for Artists, the playlist submission tool, Canvas, Marquee, and more, I guess. So before we move on to hearing from people who've actually used it, Charleton and Jeff, I invite you to screen share and tell us, what you've got to share with us about Marquee and the other tools.
Okay, cool. I'm just gonna share my screen and hopefully there will only be minor technical difficulties.
This is always the moment of truth, isn't it?
With those,
okay.
Right? I think this is working, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. Okay, great. So we're just going to do like a really quick overview just so everyone is familiar with exactly the tools that we're talking about. And then we can jump in and talk about them in more detail. So really the main platform that every artist that has music on Spotify should be familiar with is Spotify for Artists. And it does in large part like three main things for you. One, this is a place where you're going to be able to control your identity on the platform. You can change the imagery that we're using. You can change your bio, write compelling information that's going to draw people in to not just you as a musician, but your story and you as an artist. This is where you're also going to be able to access all that key data about who's listening to your music, what are their age and gender, what other artists are they listening to, and what are the playlists where people are finding you and actually resonating with your content. And that's available to you just like right in your pocket on mobile as well. And then finally, the other big thing that you're able to do with Spotify for Artists is connect to other platforms so that you can share people about your concerts, any merch that you have for sale. And when you add concerts here, this goes into a lot of the automatic ways that we also reach out to listeners to let them know there are upcoming concerts for artists that they listen to. So those are the three just like overarching things that you're able to do with Spotify for Artists. And then I'm going to let Jeff talk a little bit more about sort of our approach to fan development.
Cool. So we have a number of ways to enable discovery on Spotify and connect you with listeners. If you want to go next slide, Charleton. So kind of looking at this funnel, people stream with different levels of intent. So consider how you might describe a fan. Like you might think of them as someone who's just heard your music, somebody who streams on repeat. Maybe they follow you, maybe they go to a concert, or perhaps they've even bought merch. I think the main point is we know that reaching new listeners isn't your only goal. The main kind of idea that you want to accomplish is engaging and converting those listeners. That's really the key to long-term success. Next slide.
Yep.
So one of the ways that we do that is our editorial playlists. So when you pitch your music via our submission tool, it goes to our global team of editors that review submissions for new releases on a weekly basis and program thousands of playlists. They consistently monitor track performance to try to put those songs in the most optimal place for users and hopefully connect your music with new fans and like actually kind of enable that discovery. Next slide. Another approach to that and engaging listeners is via algorithmic playlists. Those are unique to every single listener. So Spotify works behind the scenes to, automatically connect you with the most receptive people across a host of different algorithmic properties like Release Radar, Discover Weekly, Your Daily Drive, Your Daily Mix, and a lot more. We'll go into this later in the conversation as well. Next slide. And pitching your music. Obviously, this is a huge tool that we unrolled. It's still relatively new, available to any artist or label that has access to Spotify for Artists. Since launching last year, we've been able to open up that ability to pitch music to all of our editors. I think the key result here is that since we launched this, 72,000 artists have been playlisted for the first time, which is a pretty eye-popping stat. So the main thing here is that we ask that you please make sure to deliver your music at least a week out to give our editors time to kind of sit with that music and figure out where to put it best. Then I think I'll kick it back to Charleton.
Cool. So those are some of the ways that Spotify as a platform is like sort of constantly introducing you to new listeners so you can find brand new people. And now I want to talk about some of the tools that we are giving to artists that can put them more in control of how they turn those new listeners into actually engaged fans. So one of the most fun, in my opinion, is Canvas, which allows all artists to put a looping visual behind the track for any of their content on Spotify. We see that Canvas really increases sharing, which we think is like really cool. It makes tracks like, it draws people in and encourages them to sort of like share it with their communities. And we're seeing over 200 million impressions of Canvas per day, which I think is like offers artists just like another sort of like visual element to try to connect with their fans and tell a little bit more of the story behind a track. We've also been introducing over the past several months, you're able to share a canvas as well automatically when you share a track. So artists were allowed to share to their Instagram stories for some time, but just in June, now when all listeners share a track to their Instagram stories, by default, it'll include the canvas as well. which I think makes it a little bit more engaging and makes each of those shares that the canvas is driving even more compelling for the new people that your fans are sharing with. And then here is what we all want to talk about today, which is Marquee, which we're so excited to really be talking about really broadly for the first time. Marquee is what we think is the best way to let your potential fans and listeners know that you have a new album coming out. So we use real listening behavior to target users we think might enjoy your release. The campaign runs for up to 7 days, as long as it starts during release week. And what it does that's so powerful is that it draws users into a high intent listening session where they're focused on your album and they have a chance of making a really strong connection rather than just seeing a couple tracks mixed in with their other favorite tracks that we on Release Radar or on New Music Friday. So some of the stats that we've seen, and we'll go into all of these in a lot more detail, I'm sure. So we see an average listener conversion rate of over 20%, which is really great when you compare it to any of the other digital marketing tools that music marketers have access to. And then that kind of deeper, like more high intent listening session that we're talking about, it leads to really better outcomes and better long-term outcomes as well. So when a listener is listening to your content via the Marquee, they're over twice as likely to save or add to a playlist, which are those indicators that they're going to listen again in the future, that you've actually acquired someone, not that you just introduced. And then just we know over time that like 6 months down the line, someone who saved your music is likely to be streaming like 250% more than someone who didn't. So yeah, so that's just like the bare info about Spotify for Artists, about Marquee. And now we can just get into a lively conversation.
Great. Thank you very much. Very grateful for all that and some really interesting data there. So thank you, Charleton and Jeff. We're already getting, before we move on to the conversation, we're already getting lots and lots of questions. And Patrick on the boat in London will be moderating those. So if you do have a question for Charleton, Jeff, Moody, Brainer, Hen, or even Patrick, I guess, please put it in the Q&A and we will try and get as many questions answered in the next 50 minutes as possible. And if you just want to chat with your fellow attendees, you can just chat in the chat. That would be great as well. So, well, let's start. You mentioned near the end there, Charles, that Marquee, you've had this big news that came out in the last day about the success from running it, because it's been launched for about 6 or 7 months now, is it? Is that right?
Sure, yeah, it was at the end of last year.
End of last year. So some really interesting and compelling success that you're telling us about there. Perhaps before we move on to Moody, because I know Moody has actually used Marquee to some success, and hear from him. What was most interesting to you or Jeff, Charleton, when you looked at the data after 6 or 7 months of Marquee?
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, what's interesting is seeing like the range of different artist sizes and genres they're using the tool. We saw, like, we knew like there are genres that do well on Spotify, and we knew they would be like extremely well on Spotify, and we knew they'd be engaged, like, you know, pop or hip hop. But something that I personally find really interesting, we've seen quite a bit of purchasing from like the Christian rock community, which I think is just like cool. But it's great to see that like niche genres are looking at this as a tool to reach out to their audience, because they may not have that many other places where they're going to be able to target a really good group of fans that's going to be interested in that content. So it's cool that we're able to provide our sort of intelligence about listening behavior to activate communities like that.
Interesting. Okay, well, Moody, you've used Marquee.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about what you did and how it was successful and how it worked?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll start off by saying probably one of the most interesting things about Marquee is how easy it is to set up. That's probably like, every label or every person's, dream is like being able to have some sort of marketing campaign that's really easy to set up. Literally, it's just, sending them a link and saying, hey, this is the campaign I want to run and this is the budget. And right away, it's hands off from there, and it kind of does the job. So the way it works is that usually you'll set this up prior to an EP or an album dropping, or up to 7 days from when it drops, which is usually when you want the most exposure on a new release that you have. Generally, what happens is once you've decided on the budget, is any user who's interacted with your music in the past. So if the song was in a playlist, or if they randomly heard it, or if that artist was featured on another record, they'll get a little pop-up, whether they're a free or premium user, that says, check out this song, check out this album. It just came out, with the album artwork and a button that takes them straight to the album. So far, we've tried this with, developed acts, so we've tried different ranges. We've done hip hop, we've done R&B, we've done Latin. We've tried it with different genres, and the results have been overall consistent, overall positive. And just on top of everything, it's a good look. Like it feels good to feel like the platform is supporting you and putting your music first in front of your potential audience.
Great, thanks. And did you, how do you build that into your ongoing marketing campaigns now? Because obviously you're doing,
right,
lots and lots of different channels.
Right. So from our end, it's always a question. Well, the first question is obviously like budget. Does it make sense for this artist at this time? Second of all, given the way the marquee looks like, if this, for example, the artist is a developing act, what does that content look like? If I don't know anything about the artist and the only thing I'm going to see is the artwork, so how good is that artwork? Is it enough to capture someone's attention? Because essentially it's like a display ad. So, and we'll go into tips and tricks that I've learned from doing these later on. But and then so usually based on the overall budget, we'll see, okay, how much is going to go into marquee versus other types of promotion, advertising. The other thing is, like, from doing it a handful of times, I've found it better to run it a few days after an album is released, to kind of just keep up that momentum of how an album is performing. So if I have an album that comes out on a Thursday and Friday, if I do this on a Monday, then all of a sudden I have 2x of that lift we were talking about, where there's 2x as much listeners on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So then overall that performance of that album keeps a straight positive momentum. In general, we'll do our all types of ads on our social platforms, but marquees become like a vital part for a certain segment of artists for us.
Right. And what sort of segment is that? Is that by genre or by the stage in their career?
It's definitely by stage in their career. So the marquee ads run basically on a cost per, you could call it cost per click or a cost per stream format. And so, and it's, I think it was like 50 to 55 cents. So it depends, but to me, those are like real fans. That's someone who actively decided they want to listen to your music. It's not like your music playing in the background. So, and like now they know your name and now they know what your artwork looks like, which is worth the cost.
Right.
So I think it's like how serious you are about an artist or how serious you are about a release.
Right. Great. Thanks. Brenda, perhaps we can come to you next. With that in mind, I'm maybe you've used marquee specifically, but I know you use a range of Spotify's tools. What is the differentiation when you're putting a marketing campaign together in terms of working between an emerging artist, let's say, and an established artist with a fan base? And how might you fit marquee, for example, into that?
I think, obviously it's a completely different strategy when you have, say, someone as like Beyonce who has a marquee to a new artist. But marquee tools are still really, really great. If a new artist has 47 followers that are following them directly on Spotify, I think what's great is in the marquee tool, you can set it up for your release day of release. Those 47 listeners who might not be aware that you are releasing a new single automatically notified that, hey, new single from this new artist, check it out. And we're finding that marquee tools help quite a lot. It's just that I guess it's more kind of like Spotify's version of a mailer, the chance. I think that's the best way to really say what it is. You know, rather than collecting emails, you know, the fact that you have all these millions and millions and millions of listeners on Spotify directly on your phone, the algorithm knows who you're listening to, who you're a fan of, whether it's a new artist or existing artist. And just having that marquee in place helps just cut through all the different artists and just getting the direct hit that, okay, cool. The new singles, the new EPs, the new album directly to your phone helps a lot.
And how valuable is that to you as a marketer? Because obviously, you know, marketing has lots of different elements, but being able to cut through to the people that perhaps already know, in sort of campaign value terms, how important is that?
Extremely valuable. It gives you your kind of real kind of first set of data. As Moody was saying, you know, once you start to build this really organic system with your fans, it's completely valuable. I don't think anything else cuts through that direct it's basically essentially a BTC kind of system, really, and there's nothing else that really does that we find. And especially with new acts, it's just an easier way to re-engage a new audience that they're developing, a new set of fans. It just re-engages them to be like, hey, we're here. Thank you for listening. Go ahead. And, you know, just transitions them over. I think it's a really great tool, and we love it.
Yeah, thanks, Brennan. Hen, perhaps we'll come to you next. You're, as I said at the start, you're sort of in between all these people in that you work for CD Baby in the UK, and you're dealing with artists who are looking to get on Spotify, and you're working with Spotify who are looking to get the artists they want, and you're in the center. So, first of all, what do you think of this as a tool in those terms, and who would it work for? And maybe you've got a question for Charleton or Jeff as well.
So just to provide a bit of background, I'm not a marketer, but I like you said, I sit in between specifically kind of indie artists, indie labels, and the DSPs. So we have to provide advice on a lot of the tools, meaning I have to kind of familiarize myself with the tools, even though that I don't use them actively every single day. I think this sounds like a really interesting tool. There's something about being presented with the visual in front of you that, you know, that can be very persuasive. One thing I'm wondering about, though, from kind of the long tail end of the spectrum, I think timing and financial management is so incredibly important at that level, right? So you don't want to jump the gun too soon on spending something massive, whether it comes to social media campaign or buying new equipment or whatever it is. Have you guys got like any indicators that artists can look for in their Spotify for Artists to know when is the right time for them to go, okay, marquee, maybe this is now actually worth my investment to kind of take my career to the next level?
Perhaps we'll start with Charleton or Jeff.
Yeah, I'd say right now we don't have the projections in place. We have folks who work on that team who can help you figure out what your marquee is going to look like and give you kind of custom ideas of like what spend is going to get what reach. I'd say ideally we're kind of building all these tools for impact. So we want these tools to work for all artists, all sizes. Like obviously if you're a brand new developing artist that doesn't have any followers yet, maybe it's still kind of like building out their early presence on Spotify, marquee might not be the best place to start, but we have ad studio tools and other places to help kind of grow that audience. But even at early stages, we've seen a lot of indies dip in and do like, you know, sub $1,000 spends. And we want to make sure that like this tool scales for all artists of all sizes. Charleton wants to add.
No, Moody, perhaps you then, because you deal with, in America, with artists at all stages in their career of different sizes.
Yeah.
You said earlier that you would perhaps use it mainly with artists that are a bit more established, but are there instances where you could really connect with an audience at the lower, so the emergent stage?
Yeah, but I mean, to go back to what Jeff was saying as well, like even if you wanted to, because of the way who it reaches based on the data that Spotify has is, so sometimes even if you wanted to reach, like the maximum you could reach would be like within a certain budget, because this is a new artist, this is a new record, it hasn't been exposed to enough people, there isn't enough data that it could reach, you know, X amount of people. And so even if you wanted to spend that budget, you couldn't. Like there's a certain like max allotment, like, or inventory. So but then if you were like someone like I think Brainerd was saying, like Beyonce, like then there's an unlimited budget that you could spend, because it goes back to who has ever interacted with you, or like, you know, based on the algorithmic playlists and things like that. But from our end too, like, I'm just going back to Hen's questions about marketing. So even if you were marketing on other platforms, you know, if you're using Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or whatever, there's always going to be an extra channel or an extra page before you get to the music, which is why, you know, even though Marquee might be a better tool for you, because instead of me, you know, seeing you on Instagram and then seeing your video and then reading your caption and then you capturing my attention, me clicking on it, then ending up on a smart URL, and then me picking Spotify from the list, and then going to Spotify and then seeing your album, and then me deciding to press play and then listening to it. You know, on Spotify, it's a button, you're gonna get there, and now I'm on your album. So I'm happy to pay that premium. I already know this person's on Spotify. I already know this person, you know, this is something they've interacted with in the past. So the likelihood of them liking this is pretty high. So, you know, probability wise, statistically speaking, financially speaking, it makes sense to use Marquee in those instances.
So when would you say there is enough data available on Spotify? Like, what is that kind of threshold where you can go, right, enough people have engaged with my music now for me to be able to even create a Marquee ad? Or is that something that the Spotify team would be able to advise on and say, do you know what, actually this is not the time, maybe?
Yeah,
generally, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say that, like, yeah, like Jeff said, like, we don't have like a general sense at this point yet. We're still kind of early on, but yeah, it is a conversation that we have. I think with every campaign we've done with Moody, like, it is like sort of like a back and forth, and we're able to kind of give that.
Yeah, and I'd say generally the Marquee right now is still pointing around the EP or album moment, and for the most part, we're seeing folks release a few focus tracks ahead of time. So you're using the pitch tool. You have all these other promo methods that are kicking in. Ideally, you're building the audience more and more up to that album EP moment. And by then you've like augmented the audience size enough to make Marquee like actually useful at that point.
Yeah, Brainer, maybe we can come to you at this point. When you've used this as a tool, what, you know, obviously, like Moody says, you've got people who are one click away. It's like you said, it's like the getting a postcard from. I'm old enough to remember buying CDs with a postcard. You get a postcard from people when your favorite artist release a new album. So it's a bit like that with the very direct ability to play. Is there more to it than that? Do you want people to just play and engage with the album, as Jeff said? It's focused around an album, or do you want sort of is there a bigger picture there?
There definitely is a bigger picture. I think it's, you know, what drives music fundamentally is culture, right? And subgroups and communities. And what Marquee allows, it brings back that whole sense of an event situation. So, you know, if you're a fan of, like, for an example, Kanye or something, and you know that Kanye is dropping an album, but obviously you're going to forget something. That tool that just lets you know, okay, the album is live. You know, it starts conversations around the world. You text your friends, you're like, oh, the album's out. You're on Twitter, the album's out. You know, getting that direct hit of like, boom, it's out. And it becomes this listening moment around the world where, you know, everyone else is listening to it, right? So definitely it's impactful culturally, and in terms of friendship and just building a wider sense of listening. Definitely one thing that I find in my line of work is, you know, with a lot of other tools, as Moody said as well, it's like you're going through 2, 3, 4 different clicks before you get to the actual, you know, to the actual point that you want to get to. And a lot of people start to click off after about 1 or 2 clicks because it's taking long to load. It's directing you to all these different websites or different other apps that you don't even want to touch. And with the Marquee, it's direct, so it's instant. It's definitely a bridging of culture.
Great.
So,
Great,
yeah,
thanks. Thanks, Brenda. Patrick, I've noticed that we've had a lot of questions coming in. So I'm going to ask you to do the difficult thing and pick.
I'm going to try and put these together. We've had a lot of questions. Thank you all so much for asking these questions. One, sort of across the board on both Canvas and Marquee, is its availability. We've got a lot of people just asking about, is there criteria, like a number? A certain distributor has also been asked. But yeah, when would these features be available to people? Let's just start with that question.
Yeah, so both features are in beta, and so like they're not like available to like 100% of every single person just yet. However, they are pretty widely available. So if you head to our website, artist.spotify.com/marquee, you can enter in just like some information about your artist and find out more there. And then Canvas will have, typically you can speak to your distributor, and we are sort of like making it available through distributors. Yeah.
Yeah, and on the artist and label partnership side, we work with every distributor across the board and generally try to allocate canvases by stream share to each one so that they can kind of apply those to their priority acts each quarter. And also, I think a lot of times we open them up just to wider artists on Spotify for Artists so we can get some folks on the margins as well test it out.
Great, thanks.
Well, yeah, so that was really good. That answered like 5 questions in one. Thank you. Another, let's go to Marquee now. Questions about targeting. So like, who can you target, or is it algorithmically derived? Does it automatically go global? Is the other side of that as well, or is it can you go sort of territorially based? Yeah, so targeting options, and where does it go as in internationally?
Sure. Yeah, this is a really good question. I'll start with the geography. So it is territory based. So we are live in the US and Canada. Just a couple weeks ago, we started in Canada, and we are really excited to start expanding to more territories in the world. And I look out for that over the rest of 2020. And then how the targeting works in general is that we generate an audience based on our algorithmic understanding of fans that have shown interest in you over the past. We have begun to test like more granular segments in response to some customer feedback that, you know, do you want to find within that group of folks that we think are going to listen to you? Are you more interested in perhaps folks that are big fans but haven't listened to you in the past 4 months? Are you more interested in fans that, you know, have just really been introduced to your 1 or 2 focused singles, and now you want to really hit them with a full body of work? Those are some of the slices that we're starting to experiment with, and that we can talk about if you reach out.
And I think that part's super exciting too, because I have to work with like managers for indie acts that might say like, you know, looking at Spotify for Artists, they can see source of stream that 43% of their consumption is coming from radio. And they're like, we know our song is killing it in radio, but like, how do we get to those users? Or something that's been levied at us perhaps fairly is, you know, a lot of times users might be listening in that more passive context. They might be hearing your song in like a moods and moments playlist, like hanging out and relaxing, or songs to sing in the shower. And that's cool, but that might not be building that fan you want. And Marquee is really that moment of actually like creating that fan conversion. Like Brynjar was saying, it's that exciting album and EP moment when someone's going from hearing your song and just a playlist background, hanging with friends moment, to actually digging into you as an artist and like consuming the entire product at once.
Great, thanks. Any more questions, Patrick, or should we move on? I mean, we have lots.
A couple of sort of like sort of feature-based ones of like when timing. Would you say that you could do Marquee after an album has been released? There's sort of some questions of, can labels book Marquee as well, or is it only available through Spotify for Artists? I'll put those 2. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I guess like I can take the first one. Wait, so what was the first one? Oh, timing. Yeah.
Timing.
We so the sort of promise to listeners and why we think listeners like it so much is that we're introducing them to brand new music. So we only allow Marquees to run during that first week of release, to sort of like keep that interest high. And then labels can definitely book, and in fact most of our customers are labels.
Okay.
Also, distributors can book though, and we're opening up to testing it with like managers and non-licensors as well. So I think we have this type form that we'll share after for anybody who has interests, but we can go a lot more into that timing as well, because I think obviously how you stagger it out is like a big part of your jobs as marketers. You guys are pros at obviously like coordinating a lot of different levels of promo, whether it's radio, press, social, content marketing, to create as much buzz around that first moment as you can, right? So maybe if you feel confident about how many things you have going on, maybe you don't launch Marquee on that first day. Maybe you stagger it and try to create a second wave, knowing that we'll weed out those listeners and you can kind of get like a more lapsed user base 5 days later. At the same time, we're often working with huge like mass market pop stars, and they might literally be trying to break streaming records on the first day, or they want to completely dominate the conversation around their album on that moment, or, you know, they have a lot of goals around actually charting. So for them, it's really about completely like creating that fire as big as possible that first moment the album comes out. So that's kind of something that we take in mind when we build these tools, is giving you guys flexibility as marketers to customize it as you want based off that artist and that campaign.
Okay, great, thanks. And just as a reminder for everyone who's watching, if you're enjoying and finding this interesting, the analysis we're doing here, you can this will be reported on in Music Ally next week. You can even get a trial subscription for free of Music Ally at musically.com/subscribe, and you can get sort of in-depth analysis of what we're discussing. And these videos from today and previous shows will all be on YouTube, and this show in particular will be on as soon as possible after this as well. Now, you mentioned there, Jeff, about the myriad of ways of marketing things, and perhaps we've talked about marquee quite a lot, but perhaps we can talk about everything else that you showed us at the beginning. What I'm interested in, perhaps, and we can start again, perhaps with Moody, and go to Brainer after that. But you know, releasing new music is still like one of the biggest marketing moments for every artist. It still hinges around this. So, what other ways with the Spotify tools have you found really impactful in making the most of that release? And are there variations between, let's say, different artists or different genres?
Yeah. So one thing that like I try to teach a lot of our artists and to get the message across to a lot of our product managers is using things like figuring out at what stage your artist is at, but also at what stage are fans discovering your artist. So for example, one thing that I love, I wish a lot more people focused on, is like the artist bio. So a lot of people could leave that blank. A lot of people will just have like a funny tagline, but having a story there is really important. If I've come, wow, I realized I was going to swear and I stopped myself. I'm so
You can
glad.
go ahead. You go for it. It's fine with us.
But like if I've stumbled on if I'm all the way at your artist profile and I'm already reading that, you already have my attention. This is your moment for you to get me to pay attention to you. If there's nothing there, there's no reason for me to follow you. There's no reason for me to listen to another track. Like, I don't know anything. There's not even enough for me to tell someone else about you. So filling out your artist bio is crucial. And then like what I was saying about figuring out what stage that artist is in. So I feel like if you're a developing act, say that story from your point of view, where you're at, how you got there. But if you go to like bigger artists, they're always talking about the achievements they've done and how far they've gotten there. So try and say it in the first person, you know? And I'm happy to share some examples that I thought were cool later on. And then obviously the canvas is an incredible feature. A lot of people are, actually most of us have become more visual recently. So no one wants to be looking at just a small picture. Like having a full screen takeover of your artwork and how it and having it like move and animate is really important. And you can use that to launch contests, to have like meaning to lyrics, to have, you know, give a little bit more insight. I'm already listening to your song. You have my full attention. Give me something that no one else knows. You know what I'm saying?
Feel free to share some examples now if you like, Moody. That would be.
Sure. Okay. So there's an artist. His name is Younger One. He's an artist out of the UK. So you know, you guys from the UK should check him out. I think. Let me see. So it's Younger One, YXNGXR1. So first of all, let's start. You know, the artist name is weird. Like if you see it, you can't even read it, so you're gonna want to go to his profile to read to figure out what it is. So things like that are also extremely important as an artist to try and break through all the noise. If you go down to his bio, it says, "Hi, I'm from the UK. Started making music on my smashed iPhone 5C on GarageBand for fun. Seems to have done okay for me. Haha. I love hearts and lightning bolts. Not really sure what else to put. Thanks for listening. Okay, bye." I'm gonna read this and I'll be like, yo, this guy's humble. And you know, you get a sense of their personality. And this is someone who has over 500,000 listeners a month. You know what I'm saying? But it's humble, it's down to earth. I know where he's from, and it's real. Like now I can tell someone, yo, this guy started by recording music on a broken iPhone 5C, and now he has 500,000 listeners. And you know, I came to that conclusion on my own, and now I feel like I learned something without it being forced for me to pay attention to. So artist bios, spend time there. Canvas, definitely do something there. Something else that recently we started experimenting with is retroactively going back and updating artwork. And I'll share a cool example on that too. But especially with like Spotify's, like the back end is extremely great. And if you have a good distributor, it's really easy to work with them. Like updates happen, you know, really quickly. So with one of our releases that came out like a couple of weeks ago, what we decided to do is we went back and updated all the artist's previous artwork and made it COVID relative. So all his old artwork now has masks or hand sanitizers. And this is from the last 3 years. So all of a sudden, old music that was in the catalog is now relative today. And it's tools that Spotify has right there that allows us to like have a marketing campaign like that. And we also saw like an increase in streams on all the old records because people were going to see the artwork and then they're like, I might as well listen to the song. I missed the song. And then there was a lift in place. If you guys want to check out this example, the name of the artist is Young Dolph. And so his artwork, I wish I could share it with you guys on the screen, but it's Young Dolph, DOLPH. And now like his old artwork, like it was just him and this other artist, Key Glock, like tapping hands. Now we put like masks on both of them and him giving him hand sanitizer. And so, and this was something that came out 1.5 years ago. You know what I mean? So Spotify has a lot of tools. It's just about you using it differently compared to everyone else. And figuring out how you can stand out from everyone.
So it's allowing that creativity, because what we're talking about here is essentially essential marketing skills of telling the story and making things relevant and bringing people in, but it's about using it with the correct tools in Spotify.
Right.
Yeah, thanks.
And it's just figuring out like where did this fan would have discovered me? So if I know someone would have discovered me from Marquee, imagine going to on your bio being like, I know you came here from Marquee. Then like that person would laugh. You know what I'm saying? He's like, wow, that was really good. He literally knew I got here from Marquee. And then that's a cool story. And then you'll follow that artist. But, yeah.
I guess we're in an era now where artists are really looking to make that direct connection with fans in a more intimate way, and I guess those kind of things are ways of doing it. Brainer, perhaps we'll come to you in this in that sense then. Well, the same question really. You know, you work with a whole range of artists as well. What other ways have you found are really useful to leverage the tools on Spotify to achieve whatever the goal is for those particular artists?
Definitely Moody was spot on with the artist bio. You know, like when I come across artists with a blank bio, but the music's amazing, I think you kind of get a detachment because you don't have as much information. And a lot of mistakes that I see new artists in general as well make is not updating the social links on Spotify. You know, I've come across artists who have about 60,000 listeners per month, but there's no social links. So, you know, and especially with, you know, some art, you know, depending on who the artist is, sometimes the artist name might be difficult to Google, might be difficult to spell. And the fact that there isn't social links added right on that site, you know, it makes it harder for people to get into more discovery. They can't find your Instagram. They can't find your Twitter. So you're actually losing, creating a further relationship with these fans too. So I definitely say use those social links, have everything updated.
When you're running campaigns, Brainer, because you're working with various different artists, they're not all looking just, I mean, of course you want to get as many streams as possible. That's a good thing, but you're not only looking to maximize that. They've all got different sort of criteria that you're looking for. So what about, you know, we're talking there about awareness of you know, joining all the dots to get people in and out of an artist's profile to where they want to go. But what about artists who are looking to, you know, perhaps they're looking to drive people around their whole catalog, or they're looking to get people more engaging with their merchandise and things like that? What are the tools?
Yeah, of course. The great tool, you know, Spotify allows you to actually directly showcase your merch, whether that's any form of product, you know, normal clothes, tote bags, etc., to records. You know, it's literally a one-click, one host on Spotify, direct portal that you can advertise your products, what you've got for sale. You know, and I think especially now it's even more valuable commodity just to have those links there. You know, the events and calendar section of Spotify, great. Obviously, when we get back to having shows, fingers crossed, later this year or 2021, you know, that direct portal, you know, and Spotify is your one-stop page for artists. So there's so many tools that people should be using, merch, updating your calendar, having that feed into Spotify. As Moody said, Canvas, so important, so important. I think one of the things with Canvases is as well, you know, it's sometimes new fans' first port of call into your world. Cool, they've got the single, but if you can showcase the artistic vision as well, perfect, good to go. And also Spotify for Artists, direct tool, you know, it's the who, what, where, when, you know, you get that insight of who's listening, where are they, how old are they? And it gives you a clearer vision of who your fans are, and you can directly just get great insights from that.
Thanks, Brandon. Hen, I wanted to come to you because one of the reasons you use all these tools and they're so powerful is because in the first place, the artists are engaging with Spotify and getting their music on there in the first place. Now, Charleton and Jeff mentioned at the beginning about the importance or the usefulness or the desire to get artists on playlists. You and I work with a lot of emerging artists and we talk about pitching all the time. So the pitch to Spotify to get onto playlists will help you reach new people, which will help you use these tools and maximize them. How important is that in the process for you with the artists you deal with? And I don't know, maybe you've got a question about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the number one question I get from artists, to be honest, is and managers for that matter, is how do I get onto Spotify playlists? And the pitching tool is super, super valuable and useful. And I think, you know, not only does it provide an excellent opportunity to get your music in front of the editors, but it also gives you almost a little bit of a guide as to what the industry is looking for in terms of information for you to be able to sell your product. So yeah, the pitch tool is absolutely super, super, super important for us.
What about expectation management there? Like, at what point can you expect reasonably to get onto a playlist of that helps?
So I guess this is one of those really.
I'm putting you on the spot. I'm expecting an explicit answer here.
I work with some artists that release their debut single and then they receive a lot of good placement straight away because they've got a really good track. And then we work with some artists that might have more of a release history, but the track might not necessarily be as strong. Therefore, it doesn't necessarily end up on a playlist. But I guess it would be really interesting if you guys, Jeff and Charleton, you can go into a little bit of detail around the kind of what are the common mistakes that people make when they submit through the pitch tool, and are there anything that you really want to kind of draw people's attention to as to what they should be including in the pitches they submit?
Sure, I could probably do an hour right now on playlists if you guys want to just keep this going. So I think first things first, like one we haven't mentioned yet, is that by using the pitch tool, like outside of the editorial component of 100 plus editors around the world, like digging through an insane amount of music per week, which truly does happen, you can also feed the audience that you have created with Release Radar. So the track that you pitch in the pitch tool automatically goes into Release Radar, which drives a massive amount of consumption. So that's just a huge moment, is that like you're automatically creating traffic and driving to your audience without the need for a Spotify playlist. Like my biggest point that I make is that if your entire marketing rollout is based off of getting Spotify editorial playlisting, that's a red flag. It should be like one piece of a robust campaign. But in general, like when people ask how to pitch, we still have hundreds of individual editors going in there looking for different things, but it should be about storytelling. Like what is the most exciting part about your music? And that's something that you guys as managers, labels, marketers should be able to tell the best. But we want to know about a scene. We want to know about like what's happening in terms of the story of how that song was created. Like I'm working with a Canadian artist that's really exciting right now, and we've been doing some larger marketing with him. And I didn't know this, but one of our indie editors was like, he produced a song with James Blake. He just got a co-sign on socials by Drake. Like those are huge moments that I wouldn't know about normally outside of someone telling me about the music, but there's like kind of a story and a scene involved in that music, and you have to use the pitch tool to tell that. Last thing I'd say is that obviously like not every single song that gets pitched is going to get playlisted. We just know it's not going to be like 100% conversion rate. But our teams all work incredibly hard to keep track, like have a finger on the pulse of music as to what's happening. So if you miss that pitch moment, it's not the end all be all, right? Like we have 100+ artist and label partnership members around the world that are constantly talking to managers, distributors, labels, and those labels and distributors and managers are sending us updates as to look at these tracks reacting organically. Can we get eyes on this? Like, have you guys seen this movement? And the editors are completely buried in their scenes. They're checking TikTok. They're looking at organic search on Spotify. So the pitch tool is just our best way of like democratically opening up playlisting to Spotify, but it's not the end. Like we are constantly looking for new tracks to playlist. And I think we do the best job of any DSP by far in terms of playlist breadth and cadence of updating playlists and just like the availability of actually accessing that tool compared to anyone else.
So what are some of the common mistakes you see? Because for me, at least, I feel like I see a lot of artists and managers submitting through the pitch tool as it was a review of the song. And that doesn't strike me as something that you're looking for necessarily. Are there any other like common mistakes that you see on a frequent basis?
Yeah, I'd say concise and make it very relevant to the scene. Obviously, like the way that you talk about a classical song is going to be far different than talking about like a song trending on TikTok. But honestly, yeah, you want to kind of name drop those exciting moments and talk about how you're building the song in other places. I think there's a lot of times people feel there's like too much pressure on Spotify to start the story with playlisting, and that's all people care about. Like it should be kind of one piece. And ultimately, like a huge percentage of listening on Spotify is organic. And a lot of that you can drive yourself. So it should be those two things working in concert.
Jeff, sorry to jump in, Hen, but when you talk about artists submitting something and trying to, essentially what they're trying to do is show these editors and show people that that something's happening. It would even offline indicators like, again, we're talking about playing gigs as if they're still happening, but even if they're able to say, look, we in our home city, we're playing to 200, 300 people regularly. Is that the kind of thing that would actually make impact?
Absolutely. From my perspective, I'm just looking for fandom, like wherever it exists. Like whenever people ask me what's the most important thing we look for, I'm like, organic streams. If I see there's fandom and intent and organic streams happening, that means our teams need to step in and monitor that and try to reflect that culture that's happening on Spotify. And I think the most exciting part probably of the last year or two is that like we see things like TikTok where there's excitement about music, even in a 15-second snippet, and it's completely resulting in massive streams on Spotify. But it doesn't matter where that comes from, whether it's a band that's just like been road warriors and are building it on tour and word of mouth is spreading in a slower basis, or it's a cover that's gone viral on Instagram or a huge Netflix sync. Like those are things we are constantly looking at every single day, getting hit up about and looking at proactively. So it's really up to the artist, like where is their strength where they can best build excitement? And does that translate back to Spotify? Does that build a story? It's not going to be a one size fits all of how does that playlister notice me, right? Because like a pop editor is probably looking at much different things than our rock editor versus our hip hop editor. Those are completely different cultures in terms of how music works, right? Like hip hop, something might blow up on Twitter off of a beef between two rappers, and all of a sudden songs are getting delivered overnight, Whereas like in the pop space, we're seeing viral dance crazes on TikTok versus in indie. Like a lot of times I'm looking at Pitchfork and Stereo Gum and a lot of kind of tastemaker press outlets to maybe lead the charge on exciting new artists. So it's hard to give a blanket answer around that stuff, but I really defer to you guys in terms of you have to build a 360 story around your artist and try to like fire on every cylinder. And if that translates back to Spotify, we will notice and we will support. And I think once you get playlisted too, you start to build an audience and editors start to look out for things, we play with thousands of artists, so we see so much data and we start to see names that we're very excited about. Once you build that recognition too, I think that definitely helps like create momentum to move forward.
So it really sort of comes back to what Moody and Brandon were saying about you got to be authentic. You got to build your audience wherever it is, give them what they want where it is, and you can reflect that to Spotify and make it happen over there as well.
Totally.
Cool. Patrick, so many questions are coming in.
Yep. There's a couple of sort of like more technical ones. One of these was from pretty early on, and I'll do just these two maybe. Is there kind of a limit to how many times someone would see a marquee? There's a marquee question there. So like, would a user end up getting bombarded? Do you have some sort of a limit on that? And then the other one was the stat of 72,000 artists. That's really great about the playlisting side of things. When we do the pitching tool, is there anything you can share on actually how many submissions you've had through this? And then finally, we've had a lot of people asking, which I think you're literally just covering, Jeff. But as I would like to kind of point out, I think you're saying that Spotify listens, that when the algorithms take off, when activity starts happening, to not put everything into this, can I repitch? That you guys are paying attention. I feel like we could take that away. But yeah, anything that you could say about the marquee side of things, as well as anything on the overall playlist pitching.
Yeah, maybe we start the marquee one, Charleton or Jeff, I don't know, but how many times do people see that a day?
So right now there's definitely a limit. So as a listener, you can only see one per day at the moment, and there's also a limit on the number you can see per week. So there will not ever be like a deluge of fans being bombarded by these, and we absolutely continue to monitor like how are listeners actually responding to this, because if listeners start to be turned off by the tool in general, then it's like not really valuable for anyone. So that's something you can trust us to be always making sure that it's a good experience for fans.
And what about the someone asked you mentioned right at the beginning, 72,000 artists been playlisted for the first time. Do you have any data on out of how many submissions that is?
Yeah, we don't get that an exact number of like pitches per week, but I think around 20% of all tracks pitch have been playlisted. You also got to think that there is some editorial component. So if a song is pitched and an editor like really is very much not into it, that it doesn't automatically go into the playlist. But like I was saying, that's not the end point of that artist's career. It shouldn't be like some kind of heartbreaking moment, because artists are releasing lots of music. Maybe their sound develops, maybe they build more of an organic audience. And I think that's the thing I want to get across, is that we have hundreds of human beings that are keeping a pulse on this. And the real issue with the music submission tool was A, making it democratic, and B, just creating a better system for us to listen to more music and to share it, to tag it, and to help move borders and move genres. It's really just like an amazing organizational system, because I mean, I've been here for 5 years, and in the early days, I had probably like 17 different types of watermarks coming in per week that were expiring, that required different passwords. People were G-chatting editors, sending them messages on LinkedIn, Instagram, letters, stalking them outside the office. That's not an efficient way of actually sharing music or programming well as a team. So we've just gotten so much more efficient with the team, and now we can kind of spread that and support more artists.
Patrick, I'm going to jump in front of you here, because we've got a couple of, just looking at the questions as well, we've got a couple of questions on that note about conversion rates. First of all, a couple of people asking, what's the conversion rate from listening to a song on Discover Weekly to following an artist? And someone else saying, what's considered a good conversion ratio from streams to saves organically?
From like the playlist perspective?
Yes, so let's say from Discover Weekly, for instance.
Oh man, that's a large one. I don't have a specific Discover Weekly one, because
put you on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're starting to get better around the save angle, and a lot of times, like things that I'm looking at are followers to monthly listener ratios to see who's really building a fan base and actually converting like the casual users to actual fans. So that's like a metric that a lot of label and management partners that I work with throw it at me. Again, it's going to be quite different. Like when we look at data for how hip hop listeners react to indie rock listeners, it's wildly different. So that's why it's been so difficult when people ask for kind of a blanket benchmark. It's like we have 300 million users reacting very differently to all types of algorithmic lean in contexts. It's tough to give answers, but for the most part, I always say like the hockey stick is what I look for. It sounds stupid, but it's like when I see the hockey stick, I know something's happening, and then we dig into it, and then we start to determine a data story. And I think in terms of conversion, like, I don't know, Charleton, if you want to talk about some marquee conversion stuff, but that's more of like the overt moment where we can really actually forcefully convert somebody versus I think listening to like one song on Discover Weekly for one user, because you're more so going after an entire fan base for that release moment.
Yeah, I'm aware we're sort of running out of time a little bit, but I just want to, if that's okay, Moody, come to you in terms of getting on playlists. Now we've been talking about getting on playlists for years, and it's still seen as they said at the start, a very important thing. But obviously the behavior is very different for different types of artists, and part of getting on those playlists comes down to building the brand of the artist in a natural way, but also the pitching. How do you approach that with different types of artists, and how important is it to you to get on those playlists?
I mean, for a lot of, I feel like Jeff and Charleton shared a lot about that, but the same way they look at like a story, Jeff might look at like a hockey stick. Like from my end, or from the marketing side, like this is just a part of the marketing mix. If your entire plan is to get on a playlist, then you're gonna get on a playlist and you're gonna get out of your playlist, and that's it. Your fire's burnt. You can't. That's just part of your plan. Same as marquee is part of the plan. Getting playlists is part of the plan. But you could have an incredible marketing mix that includes neither of those things, and it might work. But just understand, again, what your fans are like, what the artist is like, at what stage they are, who you're speaking to. Some artists we're not even going to pitch because it doesn't make sense right now. There's not enough of a story. There's not enough of a fan base, so I'm gonna build it up. I'm gonna keep putting singles, build more data, build more fans, and then be like, listen, we had 4 singles, no traction. All of a sudden this one came out and now it's like 10x what it was. Then there's a story. Maybe now I should be pitching. And then maybe now I should be marketing. And then 3 singles later, maybe now I should do marquee. You know what I mean? So never rely on just one thing. And I also think, like for us, it's not just the music has to be good. There has to be, especially after COVID and all of that, I've realized that personality and the lifestyle and your influence is just as important as your music. You can't just say, I have great music, so I deserve to be on a playlist. That's not enough. When they say build it and they'll come, it's not like just build the outside of the building. You got to build everything and then they'll come. So, it's the personality, it's, connecting your socials, it's having your canvas updated, it's having your artist bio done. It's like doing all the work and then they'll come.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, great answer. Thank you, Moody. Brainer, I mean, you work with lots and lots of artists who are perhaps in that emergent stage and looking for growth. How do you, I've spoken to a lot of young artists, and this is a symptom, I guess, of Spotify's ubiquitousness and success, is that what they consider success is being on a certain playlist, and they're really focused on it. How do you work with them to sort of broaden their horizons and connect all these pieces together?
I think, as everyone else has said, I think first things first is, it's great to be featured on a Spotify editorial playlist, but we also like to let our artists know that, that's not the barometer of where success is. I think a lot of artists do kind of rely on getting on Spotify playlists, but essentially, as Moody said, you still need to do the groundwork. The first things first is building that fan base. That solid fan base is what's going to keep you going. So the way we like to do it is just make sure that there's a strategy around everything. We have a separate strategy for Spotify. We have a certain strategy for marketing. And for us, what comes first is obviously the music, and as Moody said, the persona, the personality. How do we translate this online as well as in the music? And that's number one key component always. With everything else, with editorial, playlisting, that's an aside, a different complete conversation. So we just like to always manage expectations. We have had some clients that they'll ask us on a Friday, why aren't we in the playlist? And we're just like, it's not our job.
Yeah.
We're not playlist pitchers, we're not playlist editors. What we can do is make sure that our house is 100% fine, and as Moody said, everyone else will come. As long as you're focused on your own strategy, your own process, your own story, everyone else will come and people pay attention. So we just like to manage expectations. Yeah,
patience is a virtue, and something in often in short supply, of course. Hen, that sort of brings us neatly back to you. What I perhaps will do is in a second, Patrick will get a couple of questions from you, and then perhaps to finish things off, we'll go around the panel and sort of perhaps you can think about this, which is one incredibly impactful piece of advice you would have to the audience in terms of using Spotify's tools. But Hen, we talked about that. Brainer said, you're getting the phone call on Friday, why am I not on the playlist? How do you deal with that in your position in terms of working with artists and maybe not just setting expectations, but pointing them in the direction of the right tools at the right time?
I mean, sometimes it can be really tough, because so many artists will focus only on Spotify playlists, as we've mentioned before. But I think it's important that we sit down and we have open and honest conversations with the artist and set the expectations and say, you know, going back to what all these guys have been saying, you don't really have the data yet. You haven't got the story yet for us as a distributor to be pitching you as the highest priority. But let's help you build each step of the way. Let's pull in all the different information. You know, let's talk to your publicist. Let's talk to your booking agent. Let's bring everything together into the one happy house. And then we can go out to editors and to the DSPs with it. But yeah, it can be tough. And we do get emails or phone calls on a Friday with disappointed artists, but that just means I haven't managed expectations well enough, probably. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a difficult old world out there, isn't it? And it's interesting that we're talking about Spotify as with these fairly nuanced marketing tools, that we're actually talking just as much about working off Spotify in order to bring people onto this stage where they often see it as the height of success. Interesting. Thanks, Hen. Patrick.
Yes.
You've been scrolling furiously through questions.
I've
a last couple, one or two we can.
No, I'm not going to bring anything out because it would take us too off topic. I think we've done really good. I actually just want a quick second to speak and say thank you to everybody for being here. I will say I want to thank you, our audience, as well. They've kept the questions pretty on point. Sometimes in forums like this, people decide that it's an Ask Me Anything, or they decide that they're going to get angry at our friends from Spotify here. I just want to say the reality that we really brought around this, of the tools that these guys provide that we're able to work with, the pitching side of it, that obviously is one piece, but as Moody and Brainerd put together, and I couldn't say it better, it's a much bigger holistic strategy. And I hope that everyone here is understanding that everyone on today's show is actually here to help you. We're trying to work really hard with artists, and I think they've said it better than anyone else can, but these are great tools. That was obviously our topic for today, and I think you guys, thanks so much for covering them. But generally, we should be looking much wider in all of this and being partners in this ecosystem. So that's my little soapbox.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you very much. And for those of you watching at home, there's been a lot of links being shared in the chat. So including we've got the link to Young Dolph that Moody mentioned earlier. We've got links to various resources. So please scroll through chat now, and if you haven't opened it yet, and dig out some of those links. Finally, before we go, we've talked about most of the Spotify's tools in terms of different ways of promoting. Perhaps we can go around everybody and have that one big learning they've had, that if they could pass on one piece of advice in terms of maximizing, this whole show is about maximizing your impact, what would that be? And Charleton, I'm afraid your name came out the hat first, and so I'm going to ask you first.
Okay, I'm ready. Yeah, first I will say thank you to all the guests. These were really amazing questions, and thanks for spending this time with us today. I think my biggest piece of advice is don't assume that even your biggest fans are just like sitting around waiting for your next release. Like you do have to put in the work, and like you do need to make sure you're taking advantage of every opportunity to be top of mind, to be in front of them. You just can't assume that the people that loved you last time around are going to be free, are going to be thinking about you that Friday, and that they're not going to have 8 other releases that they want to check out that weekend. So just take every opportunity to make sure that you are winning their attention every time.
Great. Well, let's go with Moody.
What? No, I thought I was going to go last. Okay.
Well, we can save it if you like, but.
Okay, yeah, again, thanks everyone for being here and inviting me. Brainerd, I think you said, Moody, you were spot on with Spotify. I might start stealing that and using it myself. But no, I think the most important thing is again, like, I'm a follow what Hen said, but everyone being honest with it, like setting their expectations. Nothing ruins my day like the Friday when everyone's like, hey man, why didn't I get on this playlist? And then being like, listen man, like, Spotify is there to help you. We're there to help you, but like you gotta also work on some stuff. Again, the pitching tool is called pitching because it's part of like a sales process. It's, trying to sell something to someone. Like if you can't sell yourself, you know what I'm saying? Like it's really hard. Like work on the story, do all the hard work, do all the fundamentals, and then let's go back and do it when it's the right time. That's it from
Thanks, Moody. Well, and of course, we can all have a little bit of sympathy for you, because those of us over here in Europe are reaching the end of our Fridays, and you're about to dive into all that. So best of luck with that. Brainer, you've just written Moody's, the new slogan for Moody's business cards. You can send your invoice anytime, I guess. What's your one piece of advice you've learned from using Spotify's tools?
Definitely, I think the Spotify for Artists app is something that goes quite overlooked, actually. I think it's actually a really, really great tool. And if you're a management team, if you're a marketing team, PR, etc., even just as an artist, if you're an artist starting up, I don't think anything gives you a greater insight that's really easy to understand, really easy to read, and really easy to digest than Spotify for Artists, essentially. And that's, again, knowing where your fan base is, knowing who your fan base is in terms of age range, gender. I think those are just really, really valuable insights and can help you actually make decisions between marketing campaigns, between your release schedule, and just gives you a real outline of, okay, cool, this is what we're going to go do next. This is where we're going. Okay, cool, it's aligning. I think, yeah, so for me, it's Spotify for Artists. It's an amazing tool, and I think a lot of people should definitely be using it a lot more for insights and marketing and strategy.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Brenda. And just out of interest, have you had that call today? Someone asking why they're not on a playlist?
Do you know what? I actually have
to say, but we all want to know.
I actually have, 8 a.m. First thing,
okay,
first text. Yeah.
The glamour.
That's why he's hiding at a coffee shop.
Yeah. Thanks for your honesty, folks. And Jeff, what about you? You've been working at Spotify for a long time. What have you learned?
Yeah, I would just, and I know a lot of questions came up, and I think not every artist can get on an editorial playlist, but every artist can build their audience. And now every artist can target their audience with Marquee. And I think the main goal is that Marquee is really the tip of the iceberg. We want to build you guys more tools so that we're not the gatekeepers. I think the music industry has traditionally been one that is famous for gatekeepers. We want to build more tools so that you guys can develop your own success.
Without divulging any secrets, when you say other tools, how might they work?
Careful here,
probably a separate panel. That's probably a new panel, but more tools. And Marquee will just keep getting better and better. It's already great.
So these will be direct to fan, giving artists the power to market themselves.
We want to give artists more tools to spread their music.
Okay, very very adeptly dealt with that question.
Thanks.
And Hen, finally, you're in the pipeline, if you like. What advice do you have?
I would say don't rush things. Take your time, and that applies to releasing in general. Just take your time and familiarize yourself with the tools, because Spotify do an amazing job of actually building these tools that you can that you can deal with on your own, but they also do a really fantastic job of putting it out as educational videos and blog articles and everything around it. Like if you go to Spotify for Artists on YouTube, Charleton is in about a quarter of the videos talking about everything from royalties to whatever it might be. So just take your time and research different tools and see what they can do for you and how they can best fit in with your strategy.
Yeah, who wouldn't want many more hours of Charleton? Hey, that sounds good to me too. And finally, Patrick, we've let you be in question corner today, but you are a marketer yourself. One more piece of advice?
Sure. I mean, just once again, as we've sort of painted this picture, and to go back, I suppose, to blow our own trumpet here of Music Ally, we're a knowledge company, as I said at the beginning, and it's about education, it's about resources. As Hens just said, Spotify have their own resources. If you want to understand how to have success on the platform, perhaps listen to what they're saying. We also provide resources like that as well, and that's constantly what we're trying to do. And I have to say, we do often find people that come through and they want us to do a marketing campaign for them. We will do that for select clients, but they come in and they go, I want you to market my single. It comes out in a week. And we push everyone back to learning and education and resources, and they're out there, paid for or free. I mean, this is going to be up on YouTube. And be a lifetime learner, and don't sort of think that there's any, and I hope that's been made very clear today from marketeers, from distribution, from DSP itself, all talking to you about the fact that you've got to come forward with all this. You've got to understand, you've got to educate, and keep doing so. Please do so. And then all of these people are here, these systems are here to help you to succeed. But again, it's about educating yourself. It's about going out there. I had a fair few questions in there today that you could have found on Google, just going to say. So make sure that you're going up and looking up these answers. Make sure you're finding all this stuff out. And then when you do engage with these sort of people, you'll be able to come in at a much higher level and have a much better understanding of what they can help you with and what they can provide you with. So I'm going to just say education.
Some real talk from Patrick there. And Patrick, if people do want to get into, we can go around and do this as well. If people do want to get in touch with you or Music Ally, how can they do that? What's the best way?
Obviously for us, musically.com. We will put all the links below in our YouTube video once this is uploaded as well. And I'll let everybody else say where they can get in touch with as well.
Great. Let's start with you, Hen. How can people get in touch with you at CD Baby?
UK@cdbaby.com or find me on LinkedIn.
UK@cdbaby. That's how important Hen is. She gets the national address. Moody, how can people get in touch with you or the team at Empire?
You can, if you put Moody Jones anywhere, I should be the first thing up there, or else I'm a horrible marketer. So
that's the correct answer. Brainer, how about you and the team over there?
I wanted to steal Moody's answer, but same. Put my name in, but directly it's Brainer, BREYNER.B@blackstarlondon.com. Yeah, feel free to email me.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much. And Jeff and Charleton, I guess you don't want to give your email addresses out because you'll get bombarded with artists trying to get on playlists.
Yeah.
But if people do want to, in an industry sense, contact your teams, or how would the best way of doing that sort of industry?
I'm Jay Stempeck at Spotify.com. Any questions, please hit me up. I think a lot of folks here probably have UK reps as well. I work with US-based clients, but just don't pitch me songs and we're good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say you can follow Spotify for Artists on Twitter, Spotify Artists on Instagram, and we are now on LinkedIn as well, which is where we're gonna share a lot more of the more like brainier kind of like marketing strategy concepts, which will be a great place to follow us there on LinkedIn.
Great, thanks, Charleton. Notice that Charleton didn't give his email address out, which I think is a smart move. Okay, so that's about it. But before we go, Hen, do you have any good news this week?
I do. Actually, it's a US story this week. So there's been a new organization formed in the US in response, maybe especially as a result of COVID, with there being a lot of independent companies within the live music ecosystem that are not necessarily being represented at a high level. So there's been a formation of the National Independent Talent Organization, and it's been formed by a group of local talent agencies to create a broader coalition of the live music ecosystem. So if you're part of that ecosystem in the US and you're having some issues, then you've got a trade organization that you can go to that can speak on your behalf and that you can report issues to and come together as a coalition. So just wanted to give them a little.
Fantastic. Thanks. As always, Hen bringing us the good news every week. So thanks for that, Hen. So that's about it. If you did enjoy that panel, you can watch it back later on YouTube as soon as it's been processed and it's fully functioning there. You can get a trial subscription to Music Ally at musically.com/subscribe. You can follow Music Ally on Instagram at Music Ally Biz, Twitter at Music Ally, on Facebook at Music Ally FB. And you can email Anthony at musically.com for any other information, including subscriptions and any other connections with the industry. So finally,
can I make one more little plug? Actually, Spotify are wonderful to a lot of verticals. And actually, if there are any independent labels out there that would like to read us, you can actually read us. Sponsored by Spotify for Artists, a wonderful tool. There is information on our website, so thank you all for that as well. All independent labels globally can read us, paid for by Spotify for Artists. So thank you.
Thank you, Spotify. Spotify for Artists. So yeah, thank you very much. So yes, if you are an independent label, you can send Jeff a thank you email immediately after subscribing. No, I'm joking. No, don't do that. So that's it. Sorry for destroying your inbox, Jeff. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. This has been a great session. Fantastic questions from all of you watching wherever you are around the world. We're very grateful as always. If you do have any suggestions for sessions, you want more workshops, you want more discussions on news topics, you want people arguing about things, let us know, and we'll try and put those sessions together for you in our sort of as our program of Music Ally TV shows moves forward. So please do let me know if you like. I'll share my address, which is joe@musically.com for suggestions for future shows. So Hen, Charleton, Jeff, Brainer, and Moody, who it's now still in the very early morning for him. And if it was me, I'd be going back to bed, but I sense that he'll be hard at work immediately. Thank you all very, very much for joining us.
Thank you.
We will try and release as much of the, as well as the video, as much of the information and links and materials as possible for everyone to share afterwards, and there will be a full report on this coming up soon on Music Ally's news service as well. So that's it. Enjoy your Fridays, however you're approaching it, and thank you all very much, and see you all soon. From me.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.